emotion. Each of these is a method of knowing the world. Do we need to see these methods as opposed? I don't think so. I believe that these conflicts are false dichotomies. We don't need to choose between science and religion, reason and faith, or logic and emotion. In each case, a harmony between the two is possible and preferable. Let's look at these examples in detail. If we find that ways of knowing can complement each other, it may be easier to believe that the principles we find in the world can be complementary too. Consider science and religion. There doesn't need to be a battle between them since they're interested in different domains. They should be able to complement one another. Albert Einstein said, "Though religion may be that which determines the goal, it has nevertheless learned from science, in the broadest sense, what means will contribute to the attainment of the goals it has set up." But science can only be created by those who are thoroughly imbued with the aspiration towards truth and understanding. This source of feeling, however, springs from the sphere of religion. To this, there also belongs the faith in the philosophy that the regulations valid for the world of existence are rational, that is, comprehensible to reason. I cannot conceive of a genuine scientist without that profound faith. The situation may be expressed by an image. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. That concludes the quote from Albert Einstein. Pope John Paul II has made similar observations about the benefits each domain can offer the other. Science, he says, can purify religion from error and superstition. On the other hand, religion can purify science from idolatry and false absolutes. This is the language of complementarity, not dichotomy. The majority of working scientists have religious beliefs. Likewise, the majority of religious professionals believe in scientific principles. Science studies the mechanics of the world. Part of its purpose is to determine how things work. Science normally restricts itself to questions that can be resolved by observation and experiment. Thoughtful scientists acknowledge that questions of value aren't to be decided on scientific grounds. They also point out that science can't address questions that aren't subject to empirical verification. Religion concerns the value of the world. Part of its purpose is to describe how we should live. Religion normally restricts itself to questions of meaning and behavior. Thoughtful theologians are wary of trying to describe how the world works based on religious grounds alone. They know that questions of mechanics aren't the province of religion. Throughout history, there have always been people who want to use the authority of Scripture to overrule the experience of individuals. They say, "You can't believe that because that's not what Scripture says." Throughout history, there have also been people who want to use the authority of the intellect to deny the experience of individuals. They say, "You can't have experienced that because things like that can't happen." In either case, this says more about the psychology of the people involved than it does about the authority they invoke. Reasonable people try to learn from experience, keeping their preconceived ideas to a minimum. Throughout history, reasonable people have been able to integrate science and religion. As the geneticist J.B.S. Haldane said, "The wise man regulates his conduct by the theories both of religion and science." Figure 1.1. The caption reads, "False dichotomy, a cup or two faces." The supposed choice between reason and faith is equally baffling to me in a similar way. Once again, the two aren't opposites, but complements. Reason is primarily, though not exclusively, a thought process. Faith is mostly, though not only, a feeling process. There are beliefs based on thoughts, and there are beliefs based on feelings, some of which may be too complex to form into thoughts. They aren't the same kind of thing, and they don't come from the same process, but that doesn't mean they're incompatible. For example, by a process of reason, I believe that the earth goes around the sun. It doesn't look that way to me, but I've reviewed the various arguments and they seem convincing. I form a picture in my mind of the relationship between the earth and the sun, the earth's daily rotation and its yearly revolution, and I wind up with a belief about them. This is a process of analysis and thought. By a process of faith, I believe that my wife loves me. I don't arrive at this conclusion through analysis and argument. I've developed a feeling of trust through experience. To me, faith means something very close to trust. We don't believe something because of faith. We have faith in something that we believe through experience. When people say they have faith in God, I believe they're announcing that they possess a sense of trust, not that they have performed an act of intellectual analysis. Both reason and faith should be grounded in experience. Throughout history, there have been people who argue that pure reason shows us what must be true, regardless of what observation would tell us. Throughout history, there have been people who say that true faith is the only reliable guide, regardless of how things may appear. Again, in each case, the problem is believing that there's one exclusive source of all truth, not a conflict between knowledge and trust. The two can go hand in hand. Reason doesn't mean disrespect for faith. It was the mathematician Blaise Pascal who said, "The heart has its reasons that reason knows nothing of." Rational people, for example, know that faith in doctors and medicines is an important factor in healing. The placebo effect, in which the value of a medicine is affected by the patient's belief in it, is well known. One study showed that 35% of patients who received a placebo reported relief from their symptoms, even though they received no actual medication. Conversely, faith doesn't mean disrespect for reason and physical principles. People of faith do not have to ignore competent medical advice if they are sick or injured. The dichotomy between faith and reason is another false dichotomy. Consider, finally, the conflict between logic and emotion. What reasonable person would want to do without either one? A complete lack of emotional response is one of the warning signs of schizophrenia. An excessively logical thought process, based of course on false premises, is characteristic of paranoid thought disorder. On the other hand, excessively emotional actions are responsible for much of the tragedy in the world, and a lack of logic hinders us in solving many of the world's important problems. We are all both thinking and feeling creatures. Do we really want to restrict ourselves to just one of these faculties? Logic provides the light of life. It helps us to see clearly how things work. Without any logic, we're at the mercy of our impulses. Logic can help us to set aside the emotions of anger and fear and learn to get along with each other. If something in our experience doesn't make logical sense, we know that we need to look at it more closely. Emotion provides the heat of life. It helps us to feel the value of our relationships. Without emotions, we are capable of unbalanced reasoning. Emotion helps us to be sure that our logic is based on sane premises. If something doesn't feel right, many times this is a warning that our logic has become rigid and has denied some part of our experience. Once again, there are always people at each extreme. Throughout history, there have been people advocating the need for logic in controlling emotions, and others celebrating the need for emotion to break out of the confines of a rigid logical structure. This is a fruitless debate. A balance between the head and the heart has always been the most desirable goal. In this case, as in the previous cases, the ideal is the golden mean, an appropriate integration of the two. A dichotomy between them would be dangerous to our mental health. Next time, I will start on section 3 of chapter 1, False Analogies.